Did you ever wonder who lived in America before the first European settlers arrived? Picture this: vast, open landscapes, roaring rivers, dense forests, and towering mountains, all untouched by modern civilization. Imagine a time when the cities and towns we know today were not even a glimmer in someone's eye. This was a time when the only skyscrapers were the trees, and the only traffic was the rustling of wildlife. This was the America that existed thousands and thousands of years ago. But did you know that even then, this land was not empty? It was home to a multitude of diverse peoples, cultures, and civilizations. These were not the European settlers we often hear about in history lessons. No, these were the original inhabitants of this vast and beautiful land. So who were these people? The answer to that is the Native Americans. They were the very first people to call this land home. Imagine walking thousands of miles across wide-open plains, towering mountains, and icy tundras. That's exactly what the Native Americans did. The story of the first Americans begins thousands of years ago, during a time we call the Ice Age. You might be imagining a world like in those animated movies with woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, and you wouldn't be too far off. But what's important for our story is that during this time, sea levels were much lower. This revealed a land bridge, known as Beringia, that connected what we now know as Siberia in Asia with Alaska in America. The first Native Americans were hunter-gatherers living in Asia. They followed herds of big woolly mammoths, bison, and other animals across this land bridge. They didn't know it then, but they were embarking on a journey that would lead them to become the first people in a whole new world, America. Now, this journey wasn't a weekend trip. It took thousands of years. And the route wasn't a paved highway. It was a challenging trek across vast plains, up and over towering mountains, and through icy tundras. These early travelers had to be strong, brave, and clever to survive. Over time, as the Ice Age ended and the Earth's climate warmed up, the sea levels rose, submerging the Bering Land Bridge underwater once again. This essentially trapped the Native Americans in their new home, with no way to return to Asia. But they adapted and thrived, spreading out across the North and South American continents, forming diverse cultures and societies that we learn about today. So the next time you're on a long road trip, remember the first Americans. Their journey was not just a matter of packing up a car and hitting the open road. It was a journey of survival, adventure, and discovery that spanned thousands of years and thousands of miles. And that, my friends, is how the first people arrived in America. But their journey was just beginning. Can you picture living in a world without cars, internet, or even electricity? That's how the Native Americans lived for thousands of years. Imagine a world where the sun and the moon were your clocks, and the changing seasons your calendar. A world where you depended on the land for food, clothing, shelter, and even entertainment. Welcome to the world of the Native Americans before the settlers. Native Americans didn't have supermarkets to buy their food. Instead, they were expert hunters and gatherers. They would hunt big game like buffalo and deer, using their sharp skills and handmade tools. But they didn't just eat meat. They also foraged for berries, nuts, and roots. They even farmed, growing crops like corn, beans, and squash. This lifestyle kept them closely connected to the earth and its rhythms. When it comes to homes, Native Americans were incredibly diverse. Some tribes built teepees, which are cone-shaped tents made of animal skins, perfect for tribes that were always on the move. Others built longhouses, large wooden structures that could house several families at once. Still others built cliff dwellings, carving their homes right into the side of mountains. But life wasn't just about survival. Native Americans also had a rich cultural life. They told stories, painted pictures, and carved sculptures to pass down their history and beliefs from generation to generation. They celebrated the changing seasons and important life events with dances and ceremonies. And they had a deep respect for all living things, believing that everything in nature had a spirit. All these aspects of their life, their hunting and gathering techniques, their homes, and their cultural traditions, were shaped by the land they lived on, the animals they shared it with, and the weather patterns they experienced. So, when you think about life before cars, internet, and electricity, remember that it wasn't just about hardship. It was also about connection, creativity, and respect for the natural world. The Native Americans had a rich and vibrant culture long before the settlers arrived. Did you know that not all Native Americans lived the same way? Just like we have different countries and cultures, they had different tribes. Now, let's dive into the fascinating world of these tribes, each with its own unique way of life. There were hundreds of tribes scattered across North America, and each one had its own language, traditions, and customs. Quite amazing, isn't it? Picture this. In the far north lived the Inuit tribe. They built homes out of snow called igloos and hunted seals and whales in the icy waters. Their language, Inuktitut, is still spoken by some today. Moving south, you would find the Plains Indians, like the Sioux and the Cheyenne. These tribes were known as the Great Buffalo Hunters. They lived in teepees, which they could easily move when they followed the buffalo herds. Their lives were deeply connected to these majestic animals. Over on the west coast, tribes like the Haida and the Tlingit were skilled fishermen and woodworkers. They built impressive totem poles, each telling a unique story, and lived in large wooden houses. Down in the southwest, tribes like the Hopi and the Navajo cultivated corn, beans, and squash, forming the basis of their diet. They lived in structures called pueblos, made from clay and straw. In the fertile southeast, tribes like the Cherokee and the Creek were skilled farmers. They lived in wattle and daub houses and had a well-structured political system. Each tribe had its own beliefs, celebrations, and ways of teaching their young ones about their world. They had their own ways of making clothes, building homes, and finding food. Some tribes were peaceful farmers, while others were fierce warriors. So, you see, the Native American culture was as diverse as the land they lived on. Each tribe, with its distinct language and customs, contributed to the rich tapestry that is Native American history. Indeed, it was a world where different tribes led different lives. But what happened when the European settlers arrived? Imagine for a moment a giant puzzle. Each piece is different, representing the various tribes of Native Americans, each living their unique lives. Then suddenly, new pieces are introduced. These pieces are the European settlers. But there's a problem. These new pieces don't quite fit into the existing puzzle. They're a different shape, a different color, and they're trying to force themselves into places they don't belong. This is a bit like what happened when the settlers arrived. The settlers brought with them new ideas, new ways of living, and unfortunately, new conflicts. The peaceful puzzle was disrupted. There were disagreements over land, over resources, and over ways of life. Some tribes were forced to move from their ancestral homes, their puzzle pieces being pushed out and replaced by the settlers' pieces. But it wasn't all conflict. The settlers also brought with them new tools, new foods, and new animals, like horses, which the Native Americans had never seen before. Some tribes learned to use these new tools and animals to their advantage, adapting their way of life to incorporate these new elements. However, the arrival of the settlers also brought diseases. These diseases, like smallpox, were unfamiliar to the Native Americans, and they had no immunity against them. Many Native Americans fell ill, and sadly, many didn't survive. Despite all these changes, the Native Americans remained resilient. They adapted, they fought, and they survived. They held on to their cultures, their languages, their traditions, and passed them down through the generations. So, while the puzzle may have changed shape, the original pieces, the Native Americans, are still very much a part of it. The arrival of the settlers marked a significant turn in the history of Native Americans. Their world was forever changed, but their spirit remained unbroken. And that, my friends, is a testament to their strength and resilience. A story of survival, adaptation, and the unyielding spirit of a people. So, we've walked a long way together, haven't we? We began with the first footprints of the Native Americans, tracing their incredible journey across Ice Age bridges and ancient pathways. We marveled at their rich and varied lives before the settlers arrived, full of courage, wisdom, and a deep respect for the earth. We discovered the beautiful diversity among the tribes, each with its own unique traditions and ways of life. From the towering totem poles of the Pacific Northwest to the cliff dwellings of the Southwest, we saw how they thrived, each in their own special way. Then, we felt the tremors of change as the European settlers arrived, altering the course of history and the lives of these first Americans forever. Remember, every time you step on this land, you're walking on a history that's thousands of years old. Isn't that fascinating? Did this journey through Native American history pique your interest? If so, we have a small favor to ask. If you found this video informative and interesting, we'd be grateful if you could hit that like button. Your support helps us create more content like this, and if you're as fascinated with history as we are, consider subscribing to our channel. We've got plenty more educational and engaging content lined up for you, so don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating journeys into history. Thanks for watching!